The jerk, the mucky, the twist. And Jack James
Domestic.
but it goes like this.
Here he is, contrary to popular demand. Please give a warm welcome to James Domestic.
Cheers all. Good evening people of CODA. I'm James Domestic, but my name's on the ticket, so you probably ought to know that anyway. Unless you're really dense and you just buy stuff willy-nilly, in which case I've got some books at the back for later, so do come and have a look at those. Tonight we are going to get to know each other a little better, and hopefully we're going to have a bit of fun. And I will say that you're going to learn far more about me than I'm going to learn about you. It's not an equally balanced thing. But you know, if you think you've paid money to come and tell me about yourself for an hour, I think you're mixing up, you know, poetry with therapy, really, aren't you? So if you think you're going to get an hour's worth of therapy for £8, you've never been in therapy. Might want to make an appointment though. Anyway, I called this show "That's Not Poetry" after one of my books, and it occurs to me now that some of you may have seen that advertised. And you might have thought, oh, that looks like a safe bet, doesn't it? You know, that's very clearly labelled, and I fucking hate poetry. So, you know, just to say, there will be quite a lot of poetry involved. And there are no refunds, if that's not your thing. This show features some of the poems that if you've seen me before, you'll know already. But there's also some new stuff that's been written especially for the show. So it's not just the same old crap, there's some new crap as well. And I thought it might be fun to have a bit of a timeline running through it, sort of childhood, school jobs, playing in bands, you know, the stuff of life, you know. So, just to kick things off, hang on, it's not working, is it? Oh, technology's letting me down. These are photos, really, of my late father on the right, in a bit of a Lovejoy phase by the look of it. That's very much a reference for the over 35s, possibly the over 40s. And on the left, if you can see, that's my granddad Jim. He used to work as a car mechanic in Bethnal Green, and he retired at the end of the 70s. But he knew lots of different characters in London, and I remember him telling me about how, because obviously most households didn't have telephones back when he was a young man working in the garage. And the Crays lived like about a street or two streets away, and they were only little, like 6, 7, 8 years old, and they used to come in and ask to use the phone in the garage, and they'd let them because apparently they were pretty scary even when they were like that high. My dad worked in the off-licence trade, and he ended up, I suppose it's just a symptom of London at the time really, he used to deliver to a lot of clubs, some of which were owned by the Crays as well, and through talking to people that worked there, not the Crays themselves, but various staff members, he basically found out where the best place to get a suit made was, where the best place to buy a gun was, where the best place to, you know, where to go and how to buy a suit that didn't show that you'd bought a gun, basically. And I think the phrase was, "Will sir be carrying?" I think is what the tailors used to say. But yeah, I mean, my dad wasn't an Eastern villain or anything, but he just knew a lot of people. I think it's, you know, just one of those things. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to do a little introductory poem about how that I've never lived in London, even though, because I haven't. Okay. I've never lived in London, but it's where my family's from. Bethnal Green for Dad and Hammersmith for Mum. In the 70s they were married, they moved out to Hertfordshire, got a straight job in a shop, and fairly soon I would appear. At the tail end of the decade, when I was nudging 5, half our bleeding family moved down to the seaside. Aunties, uncles, granddads, nans, all down to the Essex coast. Clacton had become our family's salty tanged outpost. Butlins closed in 83, people sold their caravans, unemployment rocketed and the town went down the pan. I left school in '92 and went straight on the dole. No jobs and no apprenticeships in that town that had lost its soul. In truth, I wasn't bothered much. I didn't fancy 9 to 5. The dole was very poorly paid, but the hours were all right. I've never lived in London, though people think I have. Research shows the Essex accent is full of Cockney pizzazz, because millions of Londoners began an Essex chapter, and I am just a legacy of the old Cockney diaspora. We say our L's like W's in milk and ball and town, swap TH for F in thing and drop the H in house. Britpop and called Britannia made me wish my family had stayed and I'd grown up in the capital, not mired in decay. But I get it now, I really do. East Enders drawn to promenades. And at that point in history, no Carswell or Farage. So yeah, I could never call myself a Londoner, though in many ways I am a product of it, and I think that's true of a lot of people in Essex, really. Let me throw a question out to you. What is your first childhood memory? Let's throw it out there.
Me?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh God. Probably my mother being born in Hull Hospital 2.5 years after I was.
Okay, that's very specific. Okay, and there?
Me?
Yeah.
Probably my dad leaving, that's really sad.
Oh dear, I must have heard
sorry.
pull everything down a bit, isn't it? Okay. Well, let's just call it a night then. Okay, but actually, that was quite depressing, Sarah, thank you. But actually, the most common ones, apparently, are about pets and holidays and playing games, okay? But I'm going to talk a little bit about my first memory. And there we go. There's a picture of me. I'm about 4 years old. Yeah, I know. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm the one in the white shirt and jeans. For younger people in the audience, it might seem a bit weird, but it was not uncommon years ago, particularly in seaside towns, to be approached by somebody with a camera and a little monkey and be asked if you wanted to pay to have your photograph taken with said monkey, which seems a bit mad now, doesn't it, to be honest? Thinking back, it seems pretty weird. But my parents must have paid the money, because there I am with the monkey, and that was before minimum wage, so that monkey was probably getting paid peanuts, I would imagine. There will be bad jokes throughout. Anyway, one of my very earliest memories is of something that happened on that holiday in Hastings. We stayed in an old static caravan. There were no fancy holidays or hotels for us. And I was playing with my toy soldiers on the floor, kind of strewn about. And it was partly my fault, but I was very young. So yeah, this is about that Hastings holiday and the magical healing powers of Germany. There we go. A caravan named Peggy Sue, after that Buddy Holly song, I suppose. It played on the radio. Pre-M25. Can you imagine? Family awakened at 3 a.m. to miss the London traffic. I feel ancient in recall, grasp at wisps of memory. Another time, another world, before it all went wrong. Magical pink Germaline, a marvel, a wonder. I should be scarred, a pale young belly soaked in scalding water from the freshly boiled kettle. But Germaline, the saviour, the pink practitioner, the glorious gloop. Unblemished in the moment, the real scars came later. Nowadays, Hastings has sidled back onto my agenda as a place to play music and forget. So yeah, it's a nice picture, isn't it? Yeah. My band, The Domestics, have actually played the Hastings quite a few times over the years, and I've got a lot of mates there now, so I don't really associate it with nearly being boiled alive like a fucking lobster anymore, which I concede is damning Hastings with faint praise, really. But here's a photo from a gig we did in Hastings a couple of years ago, and as you can see, I'm somewhat amused, some might say terrified, as I see a fully grown adult woman born straight out of the world's largest fanny, it seems. So, So yeah, I think it might have taken me a couple of songs to regain my composure really on that one. Another question for you. Do you remember, you don't have to answer, it's fine, it's one of them questions. Do you remember what it was like when you're about 10 or 11 and you're about to move up from junior school to senior school and you're on your like 5 or 6 week summer holiday and all the kids that went up the year before you, they all tell you how awful it's going to be when you get there, that all the kids are going to bully you and all that kind of stuff because it's traditional, you know, to subject the new intake to a bunch of horrific tortures basically, and most of it doesn't really happen. Let's get through that. But you know, you do spend most of that holiday thinking about it, you know, and it's you know, it does play on your mind. So this next poem is, it's called My First Day, and it's about the trepidation of going into any new environment, really. They said the first day would be hard, that they'd smell my newbiness, that the bullies would be all too keen to cause me maximum distress. They said they'd steal all my lunch money and flush my head right down the bog. Chalk rude words on my jacket signifying underdog. They said they'd bray and shout and call me names that would not bear repeating. They said they'd strip me in the toilets and nail my trousers to the ceiling. They said I'd be on the receiving end of punches, kicks and bites, the ritualised abuse of the naive neophyte. They said they'd give me a wedgie and then they'd twist my nips. Oh, I did that bit off. Spit on my subsidised dinner for giggles and for shits. And as I sit here, head in hands, and I begin to cry and bawl, I wonder if I want to be an MP after all. So yeah, I look back at my school days, and I don't really feel good about a lot of it, to be honest. By the time I was 14, all I was really interested in was girls and bands, and you know, that was about it. Yeah, alcohol probably as well. And I had my first band together at 14. There we go. There's somebody else in this room that's in this photo. Yeah, I mean, you know, in hindsight, I'm sure we'd probably all agree that it probably wasn't the best band in the world, but it was a lot of fun. And, you know, I wouldn't change a minute of that, to be honest. You know, it was a good learning experience and it was really, really good stuff, you know. But can you guess which one of these is me? Very obviously that one, isn't it? I mean, look at me there, with my luscious locks and my flat stomach. Is it wrong, do you think, to be jealous of your former self? I certainly am. But I'd say that, I mean, I bet looking at me now, you can tell that I'm a doctor, right? That I have a PhD. I'm not a mister, I am actually a doctor. Yeah, thanks for that look, because that's... Whenever I go into any official situation, like you go to the dentist or the opticians, they're looking round for the person in the waiting room that's doctor someone, you know, pass me by every time, you know. I don't know what the expectation of a doctor is, but apparently it's not me. But just to say also that I'm not a medical doctor, so please don't have any kind of medical emergency. If you're expecting me to revive you, you're as good as dead, basically. If I told any of my teachers that I would have a PhD when I was at school, they would have laughed themselves into a parallel universe, I reckon. I mean, I left school with 3 GCSEs, it's like C grade, and the rest were Ds and Es and worse than that. I was actually the first kid in over a decade to get ungraded in German. Which is, yeah, I know. Which I revelled in. I thought it was a badge of honour at the time because, yeah, I was a rebel and a bit stupid, obviously, as well. So anyway, when I left school, I went on the dole, and they used to send you on these CV writing courses to make you more employable. And actually, I think a lot of it was to massage the unemployment figures, because if you were on one of those courses, you didn't count on the official figures. And we used to have this geezer who ran the course, right? And he used to say to us, "Don't worry, everybody, don't forget, BBB, bullshit baffles brains." That's what he used to say, which is ridiculous, isn't it? And I don't know if that was an official government directive, but it was, you know, it was the 90s, so it could have been. So the idea really was not to exactly lie on your CV, but just to sort of take any tiny little bit of experience you had and throw in some fancy wording and a bit of guff to make it sound much better than it was. So like, I don't know, if you changed a light bulb once, you know, you had to say you had experience as an environmental illumination technician or something like that, something ridiculous, you know. So this next poem is about what I like to call the art of the guff CV. And yes, I did actually once have a job when I made marzipan monkey hands. Somebody had to do it. I've been working really terrible jobs with appalling salaries, so I've decided to sit down today and write a guff CV. And listing work experience seems like a place to start. I'll make the most of what I've got, a CV work of art. In a cake making factory, it always seemed to fall to me during breaks in moulding marzipan monkey hands to make the tea. But how can I spin that and embolden with grandeur? I know, I'll call it Head of Staff Hydration and Heated Beverage Practitioner. And I once worked in the kitchen of a local restaurant, doing nothing fancy, just washing out the pots. But how can I better frame this for the CV connoisseur? I know, I'll say I was Senior Cleanliness and Bacterial Eradication Officer. One year when I was younger, I delivered the Yellow Pages, traipsing round for hours on end. It took me bloody ages. But how can I jazz this up a bit? Have I really got the front to call it Telecommunications Index Distribution Consultant? Yes, I have. So, now I've got a CV. It's much stronger than before. I got some interviews lined up and I was confident for more. I'd rock up in my suit and tie and get my foot right in the door, though I do fear probing questions on the jobs I've had before. Most every time I interviewed it'd go well at the start, but then the piercing questions came and blew my ruse apart. To tell the truth, for once I was close to throwing in the towel, but I had one more in the diary. So I thought, yeah, what the hell. So I turn up in this office. Leather chairs, oak panelled walls, various beheaded beasts follow me with their eyeballs. There's a Katie Hopkins pin-up and an Oswald Mosley mug. Some frog-faced geezer at the desk, St George's Cross upon the rug. My interviewer gets me off guard with his opening gambit. This CV's full of lies and balls and absolute horse shit. I mumble an apology. I guess I ought to leave. Au contraire, the job is yours, a new Reform MP. So yeah, my old hometown is now for Arts Central. But you know, don't tire everyone with the same brush. There's some lovely people in Clacton, still doing some great things. But by the time I was in my early 20s, I was bouncing around between really bad factory jobs and being on the dole, and I was drinking loads, to be honest. I was just trying to obliterate myself, really, and other substances got to look in every now and again, but yeah, mostly it was booze for me. Let me ask you a question. Who likes the superhero genre, Marvel and DC and all that kind of stuff? Yeah? Okay, yeah, I don't because I'm an adult. No, I'm just pulling your leg. I'm not really an adult. So yeah, I asked that question really because this next poem is about the superpowers that I got when I drank. They were shit superpowers, and I was a shit superhero. I went by the name of Arsehole Man. I'm no fun when I'm sober, but I'm an arsehole when I'm drunk and I awake. Mashed body, mashed brain, mashed soul, knowing that I did all those shitty things just like I always do. Arsehole Man arises a tornado after 6 pints, cape askew, a stain on the crotch of his tights, piss on his boots and flecks of white powder on his mask. Quake at his bullying wisdom, wince at his cruel remarks, his ill-considered jokes never at his own expense. Arsehole Man, on the shots, no one can leave now, holding cool, being fucking super, knowing everything, putting the world to rights in ways he doesn't even understand. It's just drool, it's words that stagger as much as the frame. He set fire to his cape, played pool and ripped the bays, displays his special powers in abracadabra on the way home. Flying he is, into the road, just misses a fight with a taxi. Arsehole Man, won't you save us from you? Think of the children, he's no marvel. Arsehole Man, is it a bird, is it a plane? What is this colourful sight? It's us, old man, to ruin your nights. Honestly, I was a real dick. You wouldn't have liked me. I mean, I didn't like me that much. But nowhere for anyone else. And I think one of the main reasons, or one of the many reasons really, that I drank so much at that point is that I'd become painfully aware of social class. And I probably didn't really think about it in explicitly social class terms, but I suppose I just somehow understood that, you know, for some people in life, you know, a red carpet is basically rolled out for them from birth, and in a way that it isn't for the vast majority of us. So there we go. I drew that. I shouldn't have said that, but it's terrible, isn't it? But I had this feeling down to my core that it was almost pointless, like trying to get ahead, whatever that meant, because we were starting so far back that we could barely even reach the starting line, and it was quite depressing, and I was feeling quite powerless about things, you know. And well, I mean, it might not surprise you to know that of the 57 British PMs since 1721, only 13 of them didn't go to an Oxbridge University. Yeah, and the rest, those 13 were basically minor royals. It didn't really matter what they did really anyway. But either way, I'm pretty sure that you could say these people were lucky at their lights. Do you ever ponder the nature of our lambent traffic system? Do you sit in life's commuter jam and wish someone would listen? Some poor souls are stuck on red from the day of their creation and never get to see the route on which the road might take them. Most of us are stuck on amber, waiting for the way to clear, tapping our fingers on the steering wheel and wondering why we're here. Then there are a lucky few with no existential worries. Their lights are permanently green. Their joys a constant flurry. Their lives are open tarmac and their roundabouts are clear. They suffer no imposed diversions, no potholes reach their stratosphere. Their family, class and breeding insure against such tribulations. They're guaranteed connections through their private educations. You can be a grade A turd, rude, arrogant and boorish, and if you get caught out one day, you can dispute what the law is. You don't have to be capable or even very bright. You just need the right background to be lucky at the lights. Of course, you know, whilst traffic lights do work as a metaphor in that poem to some degree, you know, we all know that actually the real elite, you know, they don't drive themselves around, do they? You know, I think what they do is they just utter the magic incantation, rah, 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 Jacob Rees-Mogg, and in a puff of smoke, a chauffeur-driven Range Rover appears like a genie out of a massive Waitrose bag. I'm pretty sure that's how it works anyway. But if you do somehow find yourself in a better situation than you're born into, I think it's really important not to forget your roots. And sometimes I think there is no better example of the class divide than our crisp preferences. You might see some of your favourites there, unless you're really posh and you probably won't recognise any of them. So yeah, I mean, I think personally that all the great scholars of class, and if you know, took Karl Marx, Pierre Bourdieu, all that, I reckon they would say that in class cultural terms, there is a massive difference between a bag of Space Raiders and like a bag of Andalusian beef and smug bastard flavoured kettle chips. You know, there's completely different things, aren't they? You know, and this next poem sets out in no uncertain terms where my heart lies in this matter, and it's called "Gimme, Gimme Cheap Crisps." Don't ever offer me a kettle chip or something that's dreadful unless it's been dipped. It'd be a class betrayal, a culinary blip. I wouldn't cross the street for a bag of posh crisps. Give me Tangy Toms, because that's my level. Give me Space Raiders and I'll award you a medal. Transformers snacks, the taste will enslave you, and it's hard not to drool over frazzles and quavers. Don't give me none of that sensations crap. I want also Oix, wheat, crunchies and snaps. Keep your Tyrells and your vegetable crisps. I want spicy bikers and discos and skips. I want chipsticks, you dipstick, not Fairfields or Pipers. Sod upper class snacks. I'm a cheap crisps for lifer. Truffle chips, I'm not having that. Give me some Ringos, French fries, knickknacks, hula hoops, squares, salt and vinegar twirls, Monster Munch and cheesy puffs all rock my world. Cheap crisps are the best. Go on, buy us a pack. I love barbecue sauces and quarterbacks. Working class crisps are the morsels for me. Get them in the Spar at the top of your street. Go as far as you like, but don't forget where you've been. I know where I am in the crisp hierarchy. Is there a great god of crisps, and are they revered, with their long flowing robes and all crumbs in their beard? I think on this matter, you could say I'm agnostic. Yeah, just shut up and give me some Wotsits. Oh, it's nice when you get a lot of crisp lovers in, that's great. But actually, I mean, like everything else, the price of crisps has been going up. You weren't expecting me to be discussing this tonight, were you really? But there you are. But, you know, even crisps that you generally thought of at the lower end of the scale, you know, the prices of them are just going up and up all the time, you know. And I don't think it's going to be more than a year or two before, you know, Monster Munch are sort of, you know, kept under glass, like in a jeweller's or something like that, you know. It's going to be ridiculous. Or they're going to have one of them little grey tags on, like they put on bottles of spirits in Tesco's, you know. That's how expensive they're getting. Makes me cross and sad. So yeah, anyway, back to the plot. I was feeling a bit hopeless, really, for a few years, and the alcohol, to be perfectly honest, was making me worse. I was already quite depressed, and I didn't realise, you know, that although I was trying to drown my depression in alcohol, you know, I didn't realise that depression's actually a really great swimmer. And what I was really doing by feeding it alcohol was basically giving it a snorkel and some flippers, and it was really counterproductive, you know. So this next poem is kind of in that vein. I'm not going to lie, it's a bit depressing, but it is short, so you know. But I will have to explain a little bit about it, because it does include as its main theme something that you might not be familiar with. So, does anybody know what ikizakuri is? No, okay, good. Well, you know, I'm by no means an expert. I've always been quite interested in Japan, mostly the aesthetics, you know, the art, the buildings, you know, that kind of stuff. I've got a lot of Japanese tattoos and stuff, and yeah, all the Japanese people I've met have all been lovely, all been really, really nice. But ikizakuri is one Japanese thing that I really can't get behind. And my understanding of it is that it's not actually practiced very much at all these days, but it is still a thing, and this is what it is. I don't know if you can read that. Basically, so yeah, the preparing of sashimi, raw fish from live seafood, in this Japanese culinary technique. The most popular sea animal used is fish, but octopus, shrimp and lobster may also be used. The practice is controversial owing to concerns about the animal's suffering, as it is alive when served. Yeah, it's pretty grim, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, me being me though, I thought, well, that'd make a good poem, won't it? So this is a poem about existential crisis that I was experiencing back then, and it's called Human Ikizakuri. Despite the distractions of a bearable life, sometimes it's like you're being eaten alive. A chef always on hand with a sashimi knife, you're human ikizakuri. Gutted, prepared and put on display, no indignity spared and your flesh freshly flayed. You knew it was coming, but still you're dismayed that you're human ikizakuri. With a game that was rigged before you could play, but you found yourself out on the field anyway, you can't start over, you can't get away, no, you're human ikizakuri. Thrashing and gasping for one final breath, your heart is pounding out of your fucking chest, a futile gesture before a miserable death. You're just human ikizakuri. Yeah, I told you it's depressing, but it is short. So yeah, but these days, yeah, I don't smoke. I haven't smoked for donkey's years, you know. I don't do drugs unless you count the sertraline, the statins, the omeprazole, the cod liver oil, the vitamin D, and all the things that mean that I had to go out and buy one of those pill organisers, and it's the size of a fucking Ford Fiesta now, you know, it's ridiculous. And I'm off the alcohol. Despite what they tell you, giving up alcohol is really, really easy, okay? How hard can it be? I've given it up 94 times, right? for those of you who didn't get it, at 3 a.m. you'll wake up and you'll go, oh, that was a much better joke than I was giving it credit for at the time. But another thing about giving up the booze is that I feel bad for the pubs. Loads of them have closed down, and I feel like I'm not doing my bit anymore. My missus isn't doing much to help either, because she's never been a big drinker. So the other week, for the sake of the ailing hostelries of Britain, I sat her down and I said to her, "You've got to up your drinking game." She said, "Why have I got to start drinking more? I don't get it. I don't understand why." And I said, "You've got to start making the effort. You're drinking for two now." She's probably out the back, with her head down the bog as we speak. If you see her out there, do hold her hair back, because we've got to drive home together, and I don't want her to have pukey hair. That'd be awful. But yeah, I used to more or less live in pubs in my teens and 20s, but these days, not so much. But there was one particular pub in Clacton that used to do cheap pints pretty much all day from opening, all the way up until the evening. So me and a few mates, we used to get in there at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and then we'd stay in there till midnight when they threw us out. Week in, week out, just boozing all day. So this one is largely about that pub, but also there's a mix of other iffy pubs that I used to go in as well. And it's called Pub Ape. Here he comes, the pub ape, trying to catch your eye. To find an excuse. What are you looking at, mush? Any response you give won't fly. Because diplomacy is a floppy cock in Pub Ape's orbit. An appeal to common sense? You just ignore it. Looking for a victim since opening time, there appears to be no reason nor rhyme. It's like imploring a dog not to bark, or hand feeding carrots to shark. It's like pleading with the judge not to put you in clink, or begging a steaming turd not to stink. He's the predator, you're today's prey. That's how he's wired, there's no other way. He just don't like the sight of you. He'll beat the daylights out of you, knock the wind right out of you, give your ear hole a bite for you, crumble your schnozzle to dust for you, spill your blood down your front for you, employ his mitts like a blitz on you, stop when there's only bits of you left, a crumpled mess, face throbs like an abscess in the sticky carpet's caress of crisp crumbs and stale beer. There's no cheer, not in here. A stunned silence. Post-violence. Simeon drains pint, kicks a stool as hard as he's able, throws his empty glass at a pool table, bullying shards, splinters of aggression, an inelegant tantrum, an incoherent but effective lesson. The cherry on this cake is the parting shot. Your face is in the fibres with your blood and snot. Your still working pulse is a personal affront, so he kicks you in the guts and calls you a cunt. Pub Ape's now departed, a sound beating imparted. The silence breaks almost at once. Someone's called you an ambulance. You only dropped in for a drink or two. Now all your meals will be served through a tube, at least for the next month or two. It's cruel, it's gruel, it's just like school. Paramedics arrive, you're partially revived, but you're not sure yet if you're glad to be alive. That particular scenario, I was never on the receiving end of that, not to quite that degree anyway. But I did see this kind of thing happen a few times in some of the pubs I frequented back then. Clacton could be a rough place 20 odd years ago. I've not lived there for a long time, and I'm sure it's probably changed a bit now. If somebody just says it still is. Does anyone here, you'd have to be a bit older I guess, remember that TV show, The Cook Report? Anyone remember that? Yeah, when Roger Cook used to do gotchas on criminals. Well, there was a guy in the pub that my dad knew, and he was on it once. He was doing some sort of car exporting scam, and somebody videoed it the night it went out. This is how far we're going back. With video recorders still there, and sorry, young people, you probably don't even know what that is. But yeah, so he recorded it, and then we put it on in the pub the next day, and we all went to the pub and all watched him getting nicked on telly. It was great. It was a bit Wild West, But yeah, so do you find yourself You know, thinking about all these things, and it's forced me really to think about my past and my timeline and stuff doing this show. And you know, do you find that the older you get, the more you think about your own funeral? I mean, I definitely do. You know, I'm not sure what prompts it. I think it's probably, you know, making sense, you know, of your own mortality and wondering how or even if you're going to be remembered. It occurs to me that the way things are going, you know, technology-wise, in 20 or 30 years, maybe less, there'll probably be, at funerals, there'll probably be like, you know, holograms of the deceased reading their own eulogy. You know, that'd be pretty strange, wouldn't it? But I think it's probably on the cards. But at that stage, funerals will be so expensive that you'll probably be obliged to secure some sort of corporate sponsorship for them, just to pay for them, you know. Imagine your coffin, you know, with a massive Greg's logo on it, you know. It's kind of classy, isn't it? You know. Anyway, I move constantly between two ways of thinking about my funeral. You asked me on one day, and I'd say, like, honestly, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't care less. I'll be dead and I won't care. But if you ask me on another day, when my ego's a bit out of control, you know, I might be like, nah, do you know what? I wouldn't say really lavish, you know. I deserve it. I deserve something really lavish and extravagant. So this is a two-part poem, and it reflects those two different ways of thinking about my funeral. Firstly, the first part is about when I couldn't care less what happens to me when I die. Here we go. When I die, I want no fuss. I just can't see the need. Once the off switch has been flicked, what use is pomp to me? Shove me in a bin bag, chuck me in a ditch, whether I expire poor or whether I die rich. Leave me out for the foxes, or smoke me like a kipper. Pare me down into little chunks for an industrial wood chipper. Load me into a torpedo tube, fire me from a submarine, blend me into a human soup and serve me from a tureen. Take me to the scrapyard, get me squashed into a cube, treat me like a knackered horse and melt me down for glue. My essence will be spent, so it makes no odds to me. Why not load me into a trebuchet and fire me up a tree? Anybody here know what a trebuchet is? That's a long shot, I know. Oh, there we go. The hardest laugh I've heard for that joke for a while. This is part two. This is for the days when, you know, thinking about funerals and, you know, my ego, well, it needs some serious fellatio. Right, so this is part two. When I die, please make a fuss, scream and bawl and cry, drop down to your knees and shout, why did he have to die? When you're at my funeral, jump in my open grave, prostrate yourself on my coffin lid, smother me with accolades, ensure a huge procession that snakes around the town like a presidential motorcade, slowing every fucker down. A normal gravestone won't suffice. I'll need something luxurious. A giant marble mausoleum, any less and I'll be furious. Build a statue in the square, put a blue plaque on my house, erase my internet history for the sake of my poor spouse. All medical staff on standby, and the Reaper will play his part as 10,000 women in this town die of a broken heart. Yeah, that's not like me. Okay, so that's how I think about my death. So sometimes, yeah, my ego gets out of control. I make no apology for that. I should, but I'm not going to. But going back to my mid-20s, I decided that I'd had enough of working crappy low-paid jobs or being on the dole. I'd started to imagine being, you know, it being 10, 20 years later and still doing the same thing, and it was not a pleasant thought. So I signed up to do a degree through the Open University, and I didn't tell anyone at the start, in case it transpired that I was monumentally stupid and couldn't manage it and dropped out. I just couldn't stand the embarrassment of that scenario, really. But after a few months and the essay marks started coming back and they were really good, I mean, if I say so myself, you know, it transpired that I wasn't stupid after all. I just needed to be ready to learn, and by that point I was. So within a couple of years, I'd moved into an office job and moved to Colchester, and things seemed to be sort of moving up, you know. And when you sort of change work scenarios, or any job actually that you go into, as soon as you leave school and go into the world of work, you know, you end up spending time sometimes with people you've got very little in common with. And I think in some ways that's a really good thing because it broadens your horizons. But in some of the early jobs I had, you know, you end up in some pretty tricky and frustrating kind of situations. I mean, I worked in a chemical factory for a few years on and off, and I think this next poem is a good snapshot of what that was like. It's called Syringe. Every lunch break's the same, staring at the sun, except for Richard who reads the Daily Mail. The Sun for people that think they're too good to read the Sun. I asked them why they read this rubbish. I tell them how the writing is deliberately pitched at the reading level of the average 8-year-old. It's an incontrovertible fact. They say it's just a comic, and they don't really believe any of it. It just kills the time. Then you spend your entire afternoon working on a job with Keith, who parrots back the Sun's views as if they were his own. And indeed they are now Keith's views, sucked up and sucked in over a cheese and pickle sandwich, a Kit Kat and a bag of crisps. A syringe full of protectionist billionaire bullshit injected directly into your cerebral cortex. And I'm not suggesting that all factory jobs are like that, because they're not, you know. And I've still got mates who work in factories, they're not all knuckle draggers at all, far from it. But that was my personal experience, you know, at that one place in particular. And actually, you know, part of me at that time, I'd gone into doing office work. I was a little way through my degree with the OU, and I thought I was progressive work-wise because I was working in an office, and it was certainly true that I enjoyed not being covered in filth and stinking of chemicals at the end of the working day. That was definitely a bonus. But it didn't take long for me to realise that, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what environment you work in. You're all effectively being fed through the same sausage machine at the end of the day, aren't you? You know, you have to be there selling hours of your life to keep a roof over your head and pay your bills. You wouldn't be there otherwise, would you? So yeah, I suppose I do marginally prefer the office work I was doing, but even though the pay was as bad as the factory at first, moving into that world, the office world, meant meeting a whole new cast of characters, and that in itself was quite interesting. This is about a bloke who really likes photocopiers. Phil fancied photocopiers. Each and every click and whir from their solid plastic bodies was a sex kitten's purr. I shouldn't do that. I should get the audience to do that. Can you do a sex kitten's purr? Let's start again. When we get to that, you can all do a nice loud sex kitten's purr. Phil fancied photocopiers. Each and every click and whir from their solid plastic bodies was a sex kitten's purr. Beautiful. Phil fiddled with photocopiers. He stuck his hands right in their drawers. He'd fiddle with their buttons and caress A3 and 4. Phil fondled photocopiers. It was his overriding kink. He'd slobber on their output trays and fill it with man ink. Ugh, Phil, honestly, good lord. Phil fucked photocopiers, called them his inky whores, discovered in flagranti with a Xerox. Phil don't work here anymore. It was a bit mucky, that one, I'll give you that. I should probably do something slightly more wholesome now to balance things out. I'm not going to, though. So at that point, Phil had to find other ways to amuse himself, at work once the COVID lockdown started, and so did other people that didn't like sexing up photocopiers. But I bet you think, that us poets are all making a fortune out of doing poetry, and we're living lives of luxury. We'll have speedboats, our cars, our private jets, and our Dubai chocolate. I don't even know what Dubai chocolate is. Obviously, clearly it's chocolate, but beside that. But actually, it may surprise you to know that I have a day job as well. I work for an organisation called the Atheist Council. You might have heard of it. Anyone heard of it? It's a non-profit organisation. Non-profit, see, yeah. Oh, I'll scratch that for Tuesday, that guy. Oh, no. During COVID, everyone where I work had to work from home for 2 years, and there was no chilling out of home on furlough for me. I'd not gotten bitter at all. So yeah, working at home really, it changes the dynamic of your working day, doesn't it? You know. So who wants to tell me? Can you see these characters here? What do you think these characters have all got in common? Got Top Cat, Winnie the Pooh, Donald Duck.
Their business on top and nothing on the bottom.
Yeah, well, nice, absolutely. It is very much like that. They do not wear any trousers. And while we're on the subject of working at home and no trousers, here's the next poem called Homework. Zoom it up, mate. Offices passe. Hate your commute, give it the boot. Stay at home to do your job. No one will know that you're a slob, because colleagues only see your top half. They won't know that you're bare-arsed or sitting there in food-stained joggers with Gruffalo slippers on your trotters. Blur the background in all meetings. Rehearse your repertoire of greetings. Can you hear me? What about now? You've turned your microphone off somehow. You can analyse that data and maybe have a shower later. Don't subscribe to workplace dogma. Work in your pyjamas if you wanna. Wear stylish headgear in an online chat, a fascinator or a hat, a bowler, beret or fedora, but keep that gimp mask in the drawer. Accountants, you can balance ledgers almost in the altogether. IT people do system reboots virtually in your birthday suits. Conduct an important interview while you're sitting on the loo. The candidate won't know at all that you're dropping kids off at the pool. Produce some figures, charts and tables in the midst of laying cable. Turn off your camera to pick your nose. Fart on mute, who's gonna know? Oh dear. So yeah, working from home certainly does give you some extra sartorial freedom, that's for sure. And as long as you do keep a professional top half, you'll probably be all right. Okay, so let's have another slide there. Has anyone ever been crowd surfed at a gig? Oh, well. Is that a yes? That's fantastic. A fellow crowd surf-e. There we go. If you can't see quite where I am, it's the red line there. So yeah, it's great fun being crowd surfed, you know. I was even crowd surfed in this very venue last year. But this photo is actually from when my band played Manchester Punk Festival a few years back. But between this photo being taken, so it was a few years back, and the gig we did here in CODA last year, I'd put on quite a lot of weight, if I'm honest, you know. And those poor sods that surfed me in air, I don't think they realised until they got me in the air just how much extra weight I was carrying. It was, the plans had to be changed. The after show party had to be held in Colchester A&E because of all the back injuries because of my increased size. And, you know, Colchester A&E was just like a wash. It was full of punks. It was a wash with spikes and studs, you know. It was like something out of Mad Max, but like Mad Max if all the characters had herniated discs and cut vertebrae, yeah. So yeah, I mean, touring and making records and all that stuff, you know, it's a lot of fun. It's you know, it's not a particularly glamorous thing. It's probably quite glamorous if you're in the Red Hot Chili Peppers or the Foo Fighters or something. But you know, if you're going and touring like a DIY punk band does, it's really not that glamorous at all. You know, you do make a lot of friends and memories and all that kind of stuff, and I think that's what it's about: music and memories and friends. But this next poem is about the realities of touring in that very do-it-yourself sort of low-rent kind of way. It's called Armpits in Leipzig. When I say I've toured around the world, please don't get the wrong idea. It sounds more glamorous than it is. So, just to make things clear, at the level that I've toured at, there's not a flash hotel in sight. You're dossing on a sofa or in some squat every night. Yes, I've played in Germany, Sweden, Norway, Spain, France and Greece and Belgium, Denmark, Holland, I can't complain. I've been touched up in Amsterdam by a woman down the front, and at a sleeping spot in Groningen I got eczema from my bunk. Played a gig in Volos in a building mostly rubble with fireworks set off at the show by some mad agent of trouble. And I've washed my armpits in the street with water from a bottle. And I've pissed in many places, inappropriate and novel. In estate cars and in vans, I've toured in both those ways. In either case, the vehicle's going to stink in a few days. Of sweat and beer and crisp bags, of tobacco and of farts, of cheesy feet and dirty socks. The odour's off the charts. I've been drunk in the woods in Limburg at an abandoned calcium mine. Been to parts of Athens the tourist board would much malign. We took a wrong turn in Germany and hurtled through a forest down a terrifying incline. That bit was no fun, if I'm honest. And you may find yourself in situations that are not strictly lawful. I wouldn't blame you in the least if you thought this all sounds awful, but it's character building stuff. And I wouldn't change a thing. The brilliant people that you meet, so full of life and welcoming. And the stories that we all share now together as a band are almost like a family. I'm not sure you'd understand. But we'll carry that experience until we meet our graves. The madness, camaraderie, and the Spinal Tap cliches. Lovely stuff. So, to be honest, I mean, I think it's been 6 or 7 years since we did a full European tour. And to be honest, I'm a bit older now. I'm not sure I could manage it now. It's quite hard on your body when you start getting a bit older. But I love playing gigs, whether it's with the band or it's a gig like this. And people often want to come and chat to you after. They might want to buy a T-shirt or a record or a couple of books, maybe. Which is really nice, you know. But occasionally you meet really intense people. There's like this guy in Norway, and he told me that the next time his band played, he was going to shoot himself in the head on stage to impress the singer of his favourite band. I mean, what do you say to that? I was like, oh, right, okay, well, make sure you blow your whole head off or you're going to look really stupid. You know, what do you say to that? I don't think that was the sort of awed response he was after, really. You know. And then in Sweden, there was this bloke and his wife who wanted us to go back to their house for a party. And are there any Swedes in? Good, because I'm going to do a really bad Swedish accent now. I've got a lot of Swedish friends. They would hate to see me doing this. Thankfully, it's not being videoed. Oh, yes, it is. Anyway, so we have booze and weed and coke and meth and heroin, whatever you like. God, it's awful, isn't it? Whatever you like, we have. Our home is just over the mountain. You must come and party with us. God, that's worse than when I rehearsed it earlier. But you might think, punk band on tour, what could possibly be better than being invited to a mad party, right? But, you know, we don't have a driver or a tour manager or anything like that. It's just us driving ourselves around through multiple countries. None of us are in our 20s anymore. We're desperately trying to conserve some energy for the gigs, which are high energy gigs and sometimes very, very long drives, like all day drives. But this bloke, he won't take no for an answer. You know, if anything, he's more intense than the head blowing off guy, you know. Do any of you do Duolingo? Yeah. Well, you know that owl that badgers you all bloody day if you haven't done your lesson? He was like that, just really insistent, just wouldn't let it go. So yeah, he was on and on and on, and we didn't want to cause offence because he really was quite scary and quite intense. But, you know, equally our desire to get at least a little sleep before we had to drive to another country the next morning, we sort of overrode everything. And eventually I did manage to get us out of it, I think through sheer bloody mindedness. But we all breathed a communal sigh of relief. But sometimes you get invited to things and, you know, you don't want to go, but you can't get out of it. This one's called the Pensioner Orgy. A sea of chamois leathers in the naughty naked nude, slipping all about on a tide of spilled lube. This one's for all those who came before me. I'm a fish out of water at the Pensioner Orgy. I'm only 34, but I've still got the invite because they're short on fresh blood every Friday night. The nature of the exercise means medical concern with heart rates elevated and a rash of carpet burn. I've had a hard life. I've not aged well. I'm like a rabbit in the headlights, and it can't be hard to tell because I'm in my birthday suit and I don't look swell. I'm in a sexed up Werther's original hell. Maureen sachets over and whispers in my ear something that I'm not entirely sure I want to hear. Her hand starts to roam and then she starts to moan. You don't need a doctor to tell she's having a stroke. I extricate myself and repair to a sofa that in hindsight someone should have put a plastic sheet over. If deep eating fixident make you feel horny, then next week, take my ticket to the pensioners' orgy. Now, I thought as we're quite a way through now, I thought I might add a little bit of gravitas to proceedings, and I thought I might do a poem by Wordsworth or T.S. Eliot. And then I thought, fuck 'em, they don't do any of mine, do they? So I'm just going to carry on. Do you know what I mean if I talk about smell memories?
Yeah.
You know what that is? Yeah, so, something reminds you of a place, a situation, a person. And the proper name for them, and some of you might know this already, so apologies if I'm telling you what you already know, but the proper name is olfactory memories. The phenomena is known as the Proust effect, after the 19th century French novelist Marcel Proust, who first started writing about them. So, for example, somebody might say, those really vinegary chips remind me of a seaside holiday I had when I was 10, or I was really reminded of your ex-wife when I smelled that fart you just did. Something like that, you know. And then if that happens, you can say, oh, well, that's the Proust effect, that is. First written about by Marcel Proust, the 19th century French novelist. You can feel a bit smug about it. Or if you don't want to come across like a pseudo-intellectual tit, you could just call them smell memories like I do. Ever since I was called a pseudo-intellectual tit. So anyway, it's about smell memories, but it's also very much about my late father, who we found dead on the floor on Father's Day in 2015. It's called Dad Sense. When I least expect it, you're there, except you're not. Not in corporeal form, but olfactory. The specific but not unpleasant odour of hand-rolled cigarettes. No filter. Those home-knitted cable jumpers, light blue, brown and dark green. You wore them to work in the factory under your overalls. A skilled worker, trump operator, CNC, other names I don't recall. That's not my world anymore. Extraction fans for the Channel Tunnel. The slightly greasy essence of machines, home projects, tobacco tins full of screws and bolts and washers. These fragrances, together all singular, remind me of you, Dad, of your unwavering assistance, of your turn your hand to anythingness, practical skills and a true friend as well as a father. Roll-ups, grease and wool are just three of the many scents that I think of as Dad scents. There are others, but those are the three I smelled today when you visited me. I welcomed them, and for a few minutes you were there to remind me who I am. Okay, so given the title of the show and everything, I don't know how you think we're doing with the idea of this being poetry. I mean, I think it's poetry, but maybe I'm not the best judge. Still, in the poetry world, there's always someone who's happy to judge for you, which will save you the bother. And we call those people the poetry police. Here come the poetry police. They're booting down your front door, charging through your homestead like uniformed wild boar. They're reading you your rights and slapping on the cuffs to the poetry tradition you're not reverent enough. Here come the poetry police. You've been under surveillance for weeks. Now you're being interrogated. Is Sir familiar with Keats? Have you read Milton, Wordsworth or Plath? What about Charles Baudelaire? You say that you haven't. They beat you with batons. You trip and you fall down the cop shop stairs. Here come the poetry police, convinced you've committed a crime. They've ripped up your poetic licence and tell you you're wasting your time. They want to see you on trial because you've messed with their protocols. They don't think the stuff you do is poetry at all. Here come the poetry police, assaulting you with their disdain and pouring scorn on your rejection of form. They want villanelles and cinquains. You try to reason between the blows that your poetry's intended for all, and not the preserve of the swats and the nerves of privileged houses and public schools. Here come the poetry police with their taunts and their insults and sneers. I can't abide any poetry written in the last 100 years. They don't like what you do with words. It gives them a conniption fit. It makes them all panicky. They think that it's anarchy. They think your verse is counterfeit. Here come the poetry police. They've chucked all your books in a skip, thrown in a match, they've gone up in a flash. A poet like you's not legit. Do you know Byron or Tennyson? What about William Yeats? The poetry cops say if you do not, that you're just a bloody disgrace. Here come the poetry police, offended by all that they've heard. When they're out on the beat, give them a treat. Go on, flip them the bird. Because language is not set in aspic, it evolves and it turns and it twists. And that's just as true of poetry too. And maybe that's why it persists. Okay, I mean, I think poetry can be whatever you want it to be. What I like to do is to paint pictures with words, really. And some of them might have been, you know, pictures you didn't particularly want in your head. But that's a risk I'm always prepared to take with your sanity, I guess. So just a quick reminder before we start wrapping up, I'm getting very close to the end now, that you can find me on all the usual socials and at jamesdomestic.com, and also that I have a bunch of exceedingly reasonably priced books over there. And there's a free gift for anybody that wants one, whether you buy a book or not, over there. So yeah, just it's only a little thing, but you know they're quite exclusive. You know, so well worth having, be worth money one day. Not quite sure when. Anyway, so I am going to end with one very short piece. It's less than a minute long. And it's effectively a conversation between two attendees at a poetry performance. And the last line, hopefully, is a very clear cue to you, the audience, as to what action you should take at that point. Thank you very much for coming. I've been James Domestic. This one is called That's Not Poetry. That's not poetry, they muttered under their collective breath. It's just weird, just doggerel and lacking insufficient depth. That's not poetry, they grumbled as the poet plied his trade. The rules of form and structure are simply not being obeyed. That's not poetry, they moaned, but little did they know that the poet didn't care for rules. They just weren't his MO. That's not poetry, they grizzled, it's just some daft ideas. Then a voice from right behind them, do you mind, I cannot hear. That's not poetry, they whispered, it's just painting pictures with words. Yes, it's far too easy to follow, and it's patently absurd. That's not poetry, they squawked, like a couple of rude macaws. But the pair could not be heard above the rapturous applause.